5 signs God is warning you. Good day, friends. Life often unfolds in ways we don't expect, and sometimes we find ourselves on paths that feel uncertain or even dangerous. In those moments, we might sense that God is trying to guide us, offering warnings to help us avoid trouble or align ourselves with His divine purpose. But how can we recognize these warnings? How do we discern His voice amidst the noise of our busy lives? Today, I want to share with you 5 signs that God may be warning you. When something in your life feels off, even if everything on the surface seems fine, it might be a sign that God is trying to get your attention. This discomfort in your spirit isn't just an ordinary feeling of unease or nervousness, it's deeper than that. It's a persistent stirring within your soul, a quiet yet powerful signal that something in your life needs to change or be addressed. Often this discomfort arises in moments when you are moving in a direction that isn't aligned with God's will for you. It could be a decision you are about to make, a relationship you're holding on to, or even a situation where you're staying silent when you know you should speak up. This kind of spiritual discomfort can be subtle at first. It might feel like a vague sense that something isn't right, even if you can't pinpoint exactly what it is. You may find yourself replaying certain scenarios in your mind, questioning decisions, or feeling uneasy about the future. At times, it can manifest as a heaviness in your heart or a persistent thought that keeps coming back no matter how much you try to ignore it. This feeling isn't meant to paralyze you with fear or anxiety, but to prompt you to pause, reflect, and seek God's guidance. It's as if your spirit is waving a flag, signaling that there is something you need to pay attention to. Ignoring this discomfort often leads to a deepening sense of unease. You might try to brush it off or rationalize it away, telling yourself that it's just stress, overthinking, or something that will pass. But God doesn't give up when He's trying to warn you. That discomfort will often grow louder, manifesting in ways that are harder to dismiss. It may start affecting your mood, your relationships, or even your physical health. The more you try to ignore it, the more it lingers like a whisper in your ear reminding you that something is out of alignment. One of the key reasons this inner discomfort is so significant is that it's deeply personal. It's a message tailored specifically for you, and it comes from a God who knows your heart and sees what lies ahead. While others around you may not sense anything unusual, you know in your heart that something is stirring. This is why it's so important to listen and not compare your feelings to what others are experiencing. God's messages to you are unique, meant to guide you in your journey, not anyone else's. This discomfort is often accompanied by a sense of urgency. It's as if time is pressing in on you, urging you to make a decision or change course before it's too late. You might feel as though you're standing at a crossroads, with one path leading toward peace and fulfillment and the other toward more difficulty and confusion. This sense of urgency isn't meant to rush you, but to awaken you to the importance of paying attention to what God is saying. Sometimes this inner discomfort points to areas in your life where you are compromising. Perhaps you're staying in a situation that you know isn't right, whether it's a toxic relationship, a dishonest workplace, or even a habit that is pulling you away from God. The discomfort is God's way of calling you to step out of those circumstances and into something better. It's a reminder that He wants more for you than you might currently be settling for. There are also times when this unease points to decisions you're about to make. Maybe you're considering a job opportunity, a big purchase, or a move that doesn't sit well with your spirit. On the surface, it might seem like a great idea. It might even be something you've been hoping for. But if you feel a deep sense of unease about it, it's worth pausing and asking God for clarity. That discomfort could be His way of protecting you from a choice that could lead to regret. One of the challenges of recognizing this spiritual discomfort is that it often goes against what we want in the moment. We live in a world that tells us to follow our desires, to do what feels good or what makes sense logically. But God's ways are higher than our ways, and His perspective is eternal. That's why His warnings often don't make sense at first. The job that seems perfect might lead to burnout or take you away from your family. The relationship that feels exciting might distract you from your purpose. The path that seems easy might be leading you away from growth. To fully understand and respond to this inner discomfort, it's crucial to spend time in prayer and reflection. Ask God to reveal the source of your unease. Is it a decision you're about to make? Is it a situation you're in? Or is it something deeper, like a shift in your priorities or values? Be willing to sit in the discomfort without rushing to fix it or explain it away. Sometimes God uses these moments to draw you closer to Him, to remind you to rely on His wisdom instead of your own. This inner discomfort also calls for action. Once you've identified what God is warning you about, the next step is to respond in faith. This might mean making a difficult decision, walking away from something familiar, or stepping into something unknown. It's not always easy, but God promises to guide and strengthen you when you trust Him. He doesn't just point out what's wrong, He walks with you as you make it right. In the end, this discomfort in your spirit is a gift. It's a sign that God loves you enough to intervene, to call you back when you're straying, or to protect you from what lies ahead. It's a reminder that He is deeply invested in your life and that His plans for you are good. When you feel that stirring in your soul, don't ignore it. Lean into it, seek His guidance, and trust that He is leading you towards something far greater than you can imagine. There are moments in life when you find yourself striving toward a goal, pouring in your time, energy, and effort, only to encounter obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. It feels as if no matter how hard you try, the path forward is blocked. These barriers can come in many forms: failed opportunities, delayed plans, or doors that seem to slam shut just as you're about to step through. While it's natural to feel frustrated in these situations, it's important to recognize that sometimes these obstacles aren't meant to discourage you, they are meant to protect you. They could be God's way of warning you and redirecting you towards something better. When you encounter a closed door, the first instinct is often to push harder. You might convince yourself that persistence is the key, that if you just try a little more, the door will open. And while perseverance is a valuable trait, it's equally important to discern when the door is closed for a reason. God, in His infinite wisdom, sees the bigger picture that you cannot. What may look like an opportunity to you could, in reality, be a trap or a detour leading you away from your purpose. The obstacles in your way may be His way of protecting you from harm or guiding you back to a path that aligns with His plan for your life. It's not always easy to accept a closed door. Often it comes with feelings of disappointment, confusion, or even rejection. You may wonder why something you wanted so badly didn't work out. You might question whether you've done something wrong or whether you're being punished. But rejection doesn't mean failure, it means redirection. God's plans for your life are always for your good, even when they don't align with your immediate desires. The roadblocks you face could be His way of steering you towards something far greater than what you currently envision. Sometimes obstacles arise because the timing isn't right. You may be ready to take a step forward, but the situation or the people involved aren't prepared yet. God's timing is perfect, and He often uses delays to teach you patience and trust. During these moments, it's essential to remember that waiting is not wasted time. It's an opportunity to grow, to strengthen your faith, and to prepare for what's ahead. A closed door today doesn't mean it will remain closed forever. It might simply mean that God is asking you to wait until the right moment. In other instances, obstacles can reveal areas of your life that need to change. They act as mirrors, reflecting back to you things you might not have noticed otherwise. Perhaps you're relying too much on your own strength instead of leaning on God. Maybe you're chasing after something for the wrong reasons, out of pride, fear, or a desire to impress others. These barriers can be a way of prompting you to pause and reevaluate your motives, to ensure that your actions are aligned with God's will rather than your own ambitions. One of the most challenging aspects of facing obstacles is the temptation to give in to doubt or discouragement. When nothing seems to be going your way, it's easy to feel as though God has abandoned you. But in these moments, faith becomes most important. Trust that God is still working behind the scenes, even when you can't see it. He may be protecting you from unseen dangers or preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. It takes faith to believe that a closed door is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter. God's redirections often lead to unexpected blessings. What you perceive as a setback might actually be a setup for something extraordinary. Think about the times in your life when things didn't go as planned, only for you to later realize that the outcome was better than you could have hoped for. Perhaps you didn't get the job you wanted, only to find a role that suited you perfectly. Maybe a relationship ended, paving the way for deeper connections and personal growth. These moments are reminders that God's plans are always higher and better than your own. It's also important to pay attention to patterns. If you find yourself encountering the same type of obstacle repeatedly, it could be a sign that God is trying to teach you something. Perhaps He's encouraging you to develop resilience, humility, or dependence on Him. These lessons are not meant to frustrate you, but to shape you into the person He created you to be. Each challenge you face is an opportunity to grow in character and faith, to learn how to trust God more deeply. When faced with closed doors, the best response is to seek God's guidance through prayer. Ask Him to reveal whether the obstacles you're encountering are warnings or simply challenges to overcome. Pray for wisdom to discern His will and for the courage to follow it, even if it means letting go of your current plans. Trust that He will provide clarity in His perfect timing and that His guidance will lead you to a place of peace and purpose. It's also helpful to surround yourself with wise counsel people who can offer insight, encouragement, and perspective when you're feeling uncertain. God often uses others to speak into your life, providing confirmation or new understanding about the obstacles you're facing. Be open to their advice and willing to consider their perspectives, even if it challenges your own assumptions. Ultimately, obstacles and closed doors are not barriers to your growth, they are catalysts. They push you to rely on God, to surrender your plans, and to trust in His goodness. They remind you that your worth is not defined by your achievements or the opportunities you pursue, but by your relationship with the One who created you. So the next time you encounter an obstacle, instead of seeing it as a setback, view it as an invitation. It's an invitation to pause, to reflect, and to trust that God is leading you towards something far greater than you could ever imagine. When you notice recurring messages, patterns, or themes in your life, it is often a sign that God is trying to get your attention. These repetitions are not random, they are deliberate, purposeful reminders meant to guide you, teach you, or warn you about something important. It could be a phrase you keep hearing, a scripture that keeps coming to mind, or situations that play out in ways that seem eerily similar. These repeated signals are divine nudges, urging you to stop and pay attention to what God is trying to say. At first, these signs may seem like coincidences. You might brush them off as unimportant or dismiss them as your imagination. But as the patterns persist, it becomes harder to ignore the fact that something deeper is at work. You may find yourself encountering the same advice from multiple sources, hearing a sermon that directly addresses your situation, or noticing a specific topic showing up repeatedly in conversations, books, or even random encounters. These moments are not accidents, they are orchestrated by God to emphasize a message that He wants you to understand. One way God communicates through repetition is by using His Word. You might find that a particular scripture keeps coming up in your daily devotions, church services, or even casual conversations. It might be a verse that speaks directly to a decision you're wrestling with, or one that challenges you to grow in a specific area of your life. This repetition is a way of highlighting the importance of that message, urging you to meditate on it and apply it to your circumstances. The Bible itself is filled with examples of God repeating His promises, instructions, and warnings to ensure they are understood and remembered. Sometimes these repeated messages come through people around you. A friend, a mentor, or even a stranger might unknowingly speak words that resonate deeply with what you've been experiencing. It could be advice, encouragement, or a warning that aligns perfectly with the thoughts or struggles you've been praying about. These moments of confirmation are God's way of reassuring you that He hears your prayers and is guiding you toward the right path. Pay close attention to the wisdom and counsel that comes from those you trust, as God often uses them to convey His messages. God also uses circumstances to deliver repeated messages. You might find yourself facing similar challenges or situations that test your character in the same way. These patterns are not meant to frustrate you, but to teach you something significant. Perhaps God is revealing a weakness in your life that needs to be addressed, or a strength that He wants you to develop. The repetition is a way of reinforcing the lesson, ensuring that it sinks in and brings about lasting change. For example, if you consistently find yourself in relationships or situations where your boundaries are tested, it could be God showing you the importance of standing firm in your values. If you repeatedly face financial struggles despite working hard, it might be a prompt to examine your spending habits or trust Him more fully with your provision. These recurring scenarios are opportunities to grow, to reflect on your choices, and to seek God's wisdom for how to navigate them. Another way these repeated patterns manifest is through feelings or impressions that won't go away. You might have a persistent sense that you need to address a particular issue, pursue a specific calling, or let go of something that's holding you back. No matter how much you try to push these feelings aside, they keep resurfacing, often at the most unexpected times. This inner prompting is God's way of steering your heart toward what matters most, calling you to act in obedience to His will. Ignoring these repeated messages can lead to missed opportunities or unnecessary struggles. God doesn't repeat Himself without reason. His persistence is a reflection of His love and patience. He knows that we are often distracted, hesitant, or resistant to change, and He gently reminds us until we are ready to respond. By paying attention to these patterns and seeking His guidance, you can align yourself with His purpose and avoid unnecessary detours or pain. Responding to repeated messages requires humility and openness. It means being willing to pause, reflect, and ask God what He is trying to tell you. Spend time in prayer, asking Him for clarity and understanding. Be honest about any fears, doubts, or resistance you might have, and ask for the courage to follow where He is leading. Trust that His intentions for you are always for your good, even if the path forward seems uncertain or challenging. It's also important to take practical steps in response to these messages. If you keep hearing advice to rest, for example, consider whether you've been overworking yourself and need to prioritize your health. If a theme of forgiveness keeps coming up, examine whether there's someone you need to reconcile with. God's messages are not meant to be theoretical, they are meant to be lived out in your actions and decisions. Recognizing and responding to repeated messages from God strengthens your relationship with Him. It deepens your trust in His guidance and allows you to experience the peace and purpose that come from walking in His will. These patterns are a reminder that He is actively involved in your life, always seeking to lead you closer to Him. So when you notice these signs, don't ignore them. Lean into them, ask God what He wants you to learn, and take the steps needed to align your life with His plan. When you experience a deep, unshakable sense of unease, it can often be a sign that God is trying to warn you or redirect you. This unease isn't the fleeting discomfort of uncertainty or fear, but a persistent feeling in your spirit that something is off. It lingers in your thoughts, weighs on your heart, and doesn't fade even when you try to ignore it. This inner tension is often a divine nudge, signaling that a choice, path, or situation you're facing is not aligned with God's will for your life. God speaks to us in ways that resonate with our inner being, and this sense of unease is one of the ways He captures our attention. It might manifest as a lack of peace about a decision you're considering. Even when everything on the surface seems logical and appealing, your spirit might feel restless, hesitant, or unsettled. This feeling is not to be dismissed lightly. It is often God's way of cautioning you, urging you to pause and seek His guidance before moving forward. You might find this unease cropping up in relationships. Perhaps you're drawn to a certain person, either romantically or as a friend, but every interaction leaves you feeling uneasy. There might not be any clear, visible red flags, yet something deep within you feels wrong. This isn't paranoia or overthinking, it's discernment. God may be protecting you from entering into a relationship that could harm you emotionally, spiritually, or even physically. He sees what you cannot, and that discomfort is His way of guiding you toward healthier connections. The same sense of unease can arise in decisions involving your career or opportunities. You may be presented with what looks like an incredible job offer, better pay, more prestige, and seemingly ideal conditions. Yet, despite how perfect it seems on paper, you feel an inexplicable hesitation. This could be God's way of shielding you from a situation that might compromise your integrity, lead you away from your purpose, or distract you from priorities that truly matter. Recognizing this unease and honoring it requires a willingness to trust that God's plans for you are greater than what is immediately visible. Sometimes this inner tension emerges when you're heading down a path that isn't meant for you. It could be a habit, a pursuit, or a way of thinking that seems harmless at first, but leads you away from God's best for your life. For instance, you might find yourself pursuing material success or validation from others, only to feel increasingly empty and dissatisfied. That dissatisfaction is often a spiritual signal, a reminder that your fulfillment comes from God, not from the things of this world. Ignoring it might lead you further into patterns that erode your sense of peace and purpose. This unease isn't always about warning you away from something. Sometimes it's about calling you towards something better. God might be using that inner tension to push you out of complacency, urging you to grow, change, or take a step of faith. For example, you might feel restless in a job or routine that once brought you contentment. That restlessness might be God's way of prompting you to explore a new direction, develop your gifts, or step into a calling you've been avoiding. Recognizing this sense of unease requires attentiveness to your own spirit. In the busyness of daily life, it's easy to dismiss or suppress these feelings, attributing them to stress or overthinking. But God often speaks in stillness, in the quiet moments when you pause and tune into what's happening within. Setting aside time for prayer, reflection, and solitude allows you to hear His voice more clearly. In these moments, you can bring your unease before Him, asking for wisdom, clarity, and direction. It's also important to differentiate between the unease that comes from God and the fear or anxiety that stems from other sources. Fear often paralyzes, whereas divine unease compels you to action or introspection. Anxiety creates confusion and chaos in your mind, but God's warnings, though unsettling, carry a sense of purpose and conviction. If you're unsure, pray for discernment and consider seeking counsel from trusted mentors or spiritual leaders who can help you navigate your feelings with wisdom. Ignoring this unease can have consequences. Moving forward without addressing it might lead to regret, heartache, or missed opportunities to align with God's plan. For instance, entering into a partnership that you felt uneasy about might result in conflict or disillusionment later on. Similarly, pursuing a goal that felt wrong from the start might leave you feeling unfulfilled, even if you achieve it. These experiences serve as reminders that God's guidance is not just a safeguard, it's a gift that leads you toward the abundant life He desires for you. Embracing this unease as a gift requires humility and trust. It means being willing to set aside your own plans and desires, acknowledging that God's wisdom surpasses your understanding. It also means being patient, as His timing might require you to wait for clarity or for the right opportunity to emerge. This surrender can be challenging, especially when you're eager for answers or solutions. But in choosing to trust His guidance, you open yourself to His peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding, and guards your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. Ultimately, this sense of unease is a reminder that you are not navigating life alone. God is with you, actively involved in your decisions, relationships, and pursuits. He cares deeply about every aspect of your life, and His guidance is a reflection of His love for you. So when you feel that inner tension, don't dismiss it or push it aside. Lean into it, seek His wisdom, and trust that He is leading you toward what is best for you. His warnings, though sometimes uncomfortable, are always an expression of His care and protection over your life. Closed doors are one of the clearest and most powerful ways God communicates His will to us. While it can be disappointing or even frustrating when opportunities we desire don't work out, these moments are often divine interventions meant to protect us, redirect us, or prepare us for something better. A closed door is not a punishment or a sign of rejection. It is a way of ensuring that we are aligned with God's greater purpose for our lives. You may experience a closed door in various ways. It could be a job opportunity that doesn't materialize, a relationship that ends unexpectedly, or plans that seem to fall apart no matter how hard you try to make them work. In these moments, it's natural to feel confused, disappointed, or even angry. You may question why something you prayed for, worked toward, or deeply desired didn't come to fruition. However, these closed doors are not random or meaningless. They are intentional acts of guidance from a God who sees what lies ahead and knows what is best for you. When God closes a door, it often means He is protecting you from something you cannot see. What looks like a promising opportunity may carry hidden challenges or dangers that would ultimately harm you. Perhaps the job you wanted would have led you into a toxic work environment, or the relationship you hoped for would have hindered your growth or drawn you away from your faith. God's vision is not limited to the present. He sees the bigger picture and acts out of love and care for your well-being. Trusting His closed doors requires faith in His wisdom and His desire to protect you. Sometimes a closed door is not about protection but redirection. You may be pursuing a path that seems right to you, but God has a different plan, one that aligns more closely with His purpose for your life. When a door closes, it's an invitation to look for the path he is opening instead. These moments call for flexibility and openness to his leading, even if it means letting go of your own expectations. What you thought was the right direction might pale in comparison to the blessings he has prepared for you elsewhere. God's timing is also a key factor in closed doors. It's possible that the opportunity you desire is not wrong in itself, but simply not right for this moment in your life. A closed door might mean not yet rather than no. In these cases, God is preparing you for what lies ahead, ensuring that when the time comes, you are ready to step into his plans with confidence and maturity. Waiting can be difficult, but it's during these periods of delay that God often does his deepest work in your heart and character. Closed doors also teach us to depend on God rather than our own understanding. When things don't go as planned, it forces us to seek his guidance and lean on his promises. It humbles us, reminding us that we are not in control and that our perspective is limited. In this way, closed doors become opportunities for spiritual growth, drawing us closer to God and deepening our trust in his plans. The disappointment of a closed door can transform into a profound sense of peace when we surrender our desires to him and trust that he is leading us towards something greater. It's important to recognize that closed doors are not always permanent. Sometimes God allows a door to close temporarily to refine your character, strengthen your faith, or teach you valuable lessons. The skills, experiences, and insights you gain during this season of waiting are often exactly what you need to succeed when the door eventually reopens. For example, a missed promotion might motivate you to develop new skills, or a delay in a dream might deepen your resilience and perseverance. These periods of preparation are not wasted, they are an integral part of God's plan for your growth. Understanding and accepting closed doors require a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing them as failures or setbacks, try to see them as opportunities to align more closely with God's will. Ask him what he wants you to learn from the experience and how you can grow through it. Look for the new paths he is opening and be willing to follow where he leads. By focusing on his sovereignty and trusting his plans, you can find peace and purpose even in the midst of disappointment. Praying for clarity and wisdom is essential when you encounter a closed door. Bring your questions, frustrations, and hopes to God, and ask him to reveal his plans for you. Seek his presence in moments of uncertainty, and allow his word to guide and comfort you. Surround yourself with wise and supportive people who can offer encouragement and perspective. Often, God uses others to confirm his guidance and provide insight into the next steps you should take. Closed doors are not the end of the story. They are transitions, guiding you from one chapter to the next in the narrative of your life. Each closed door brings you closer to the open door God has prepared for you, one that leads to greater blessings, deeper fulfillment, and closer alignment with his purpose. By embracing these moments with faith and gratitude, you can move forward with confidence, knowing that God's plans for you are always for good and not for harm. When you begin to experience a sense of intense frustration with the direction of your life, this feeling may be more than just a product of stress or dissatisfaction. It could very well be God's warning to you. Frustration can arise in many areas of our lives, from personal relationships and career pursuits to spiritual growth and self-worth. It often stems from a place of feeling stuck or unfulfilled. You may find that no matter how hard you try to move forward or make progress, things just don't seem to work out. This persistent feeling of being blocked, hindered, or limited could be a sign that God is attempting to redirect your path or teach you something important about his plans for you. Frustration often comes when we are not aligning with God's will for our lives. It may appear when you are pursuing a goal that, despite your hard work and determination, keeps slipping through your fingers. You might be doing everything right in the eyes of the world, working tirelessly, making sacrifices, and putting in the hours, but your efforts still seem to yield little to no results. This could be a message from God that you are investing your energy into something that isn't aligned with your true purpose. You might be chasing goals that, while they may appear rewarding in the moment, aren't the ones God has destined for you. His plans are often greater than we can imagine, and when we find ourselves hitting roadblock after roadblock, it might be a sign that he is calling us to let go of our own expectations and seek his guidance. Frustration can also surface when you are holding on to something that is not meant for you. This could be a job, a relationship, or a lifestyle that has outlived its purpose in your life. You may feel deeply unsettled, yet find it difficult to release control. God may be warning you that it's time to move on and trust that He has something better in store for you. Letting go can be one of the most difficult things to do, especially when we have invested time, emotions, and resources into something that no longer serves our highest good. But God's timing and purpose are always perfect, and releasing what is no longer meant for you can free you to step into a new chapter filled with growth, joy, and peace. The frustration you're feeling could also be a result of being out of sync with God's rhythm. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life, constantly striving to achieve more and be more. But this can sometimes cause us to lose touch with the stillness and peace that comes from being in alignment with God. You may be moving so fast, trying to accomplish tasks, pursue goals, or maintain relationships, that you forget to pause and check in with God about what He wants for you. It's when we are disconnected from His will and His timing that frustration builds. In such moments, God may be using that frustration to remind you to slow down, take a breath, and realign yourself with His plans. This is often a divine invitation to deepen your relationship with God through prayer, reflection, and listening to His voice. The frustration you're experiencing may also be linked to an area of your life where God is trying to grow you. Sometimes we face challenges that feel overwhelming or insurmountable. Instead of seeing these obstacles as the hindrances they appear to be, we are called to view them as opportunities for transformation. God often uses frustration as a tool to build our character, increase our patience, and strengthen our perseverance. If you feel like you're stuck in a cycle of frustration, ask God to reveal what He wants you to learn through this process. Perhaps He is teaching you to trust Him more, to let go of self-reliance, or to be more patient with His timing. Frustration can be a pathway to greater maturity, and though it may not be pleasant, it is often necessary for our spiritual growth. Another aspect of frustration that can signal a divine warning is when it starts to affect your mental, emotional, or physical health. When stress, anxiety, or irritability become constant companions, it's a red flag that something isn't right. These signs of overwhelm may indicate that you are carrying a burden that was never meant for you to carry. God does not desire for you to live a life filled with constant tension or strain. In such moments, it is essential to pause and ask yourself if the frustration is coming from your own actions or expectations, or if it is a result of God's gentle nudge to step back and reevaluate your life. If you continue to push through despite these warning signs, you might find that the frustration intensifies, eventually leading to burnout or emotional exhaustion. In these times, it is vital to seek the counsel of God's Word and the support of wise, godly people who can offer perspective. God may be revealing an area of your life that requires healing, renewal, or a change of direction. The frustration you feel could be an invitation to go deeper into God's presence and hear what He is trying to say to you. It may be that He is calling you to a time of rest or reflection, so that you can recalibrate and align yourself with His peace. Sometimes the most frustrating moments in life are the ones that push us to turn back to God, to trust Him fully, and to depend on His strength. Finally, when frustration sets in, it is a reminder of how much we need God's guidance in our lives. Our human tendency is to take matters into our own hands, to push through obstacles in our own strength, but God is calling us to surrender. It's in surrendering our plans, our expectations, and our desires that we begin to experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. When frustration rises up, take it as a sign that God is calling you to lean on Him more fully. Seek His wisdom, His direction, and His peace, and trust that He will show you the way. Ultimately, frustration is not the end of the story. It is often the beginning of a new season of growth, transformation, and deeper intimacy with God.